On a clear test, ITALC meeting 11/9/2016.
November 9th meeting to order. Our chair, Stuart, is not here, so I will be chairing in his absence. I know Brad's not going to be here, although we'll be expecting Carolyn shortly. Move to item number 1, approval of meeting minutes from October 12th.
I have read the minutes. They look fine to me, so I will move approval.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Follow the rule.
Item 2, public comment. We do have a request to comment. Catherine Rhodes.
Hello. I'm Catherine Rhodes. Excuse me, I'm a civil engineer. And since the Measure A didn't pass and the charter stadium issues didn't pass, what I think you guys should do is to take over C-plus level projects from the port and the airport, because the Department of Transportation is not only transit and highways, it's also port and airport, and also hazardous pipeline. And so, in the executive meeting, staff was supposed to bring back a report to confirm what I've been saying all these years, that you could have always used the airport revenue. You are supposed to be in charge of it. And I'll give you an example. For the 10th Avenue Marine Terminal, the port's in charge of that, but they're going to be doing some work in a low-income neighborhood. And then you could actually say that's kind of a discrimination thing. It's because you guys are not taking ownership of this. So I actually, hopefully staff will actually give you the report back. But somebody at the airport named Sandy Burdock actually wrote an article in his JPA Solutions blog, and he got it kind of wrong. Sandy was one of 12 grandfathered airports. And the way that New York, New Jersey, Boston, Chicago, San Francisco, Denver created their beautiful waterfronts is by using the airport revenue. For example, for the World Trade Center, that was built using airport revenue money. And so, since you guys don't have that money coming in, you didn't get it passed, I'm thinking that you should actually look at this as a funding source. Of course, you would have to make changes to state law. But, and then another nice thing is that the Department of Transportation is actually going to be doing an audit of the FAA's oversight of revenue diversion for grandfathered airports. So you have such a big opportunity, and one of the issues that they try to make it non-clear is that if you, I think maybe I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any communications from meeting members?
I have to be out of here by 11:25, so please try to arrange the schedule, because I expect to get up and walk out at that time.
Okay.
Thank you, Nancy.
Right. Item number 3. Veronica, it's a meeting calendar. Anybody have any issues with the identified dates? I don't have any. January 11th, I'm supposed to report, but I believe that is an excuse to not go.
All right. I hope you are on the right side of the law.
Me too. So anybody move approval?
It's a consent item.
Oh, yeah.
But we do need approval, so. Yeah.
We need a motion?
Yes,
Oh,
please.
move approval.
Thanks.
All in favor? Okay. Move on to item number 4.
Yep. So just 3 items to report back on since your last meeting in October. Your ITALC chair presented the 2016 ITALC annual report to the SAMDAG board on October 28th. The Transportation Committee received the usual Smart Growth Incentive Program and Active Transportation Grant Program quarterly updates. And then staff also presented to the, and the Transportation Committee recommended board approval approval of the EMP Land Management Grant Program project rankings and funding recommendations. Those were on your agenda at your last meeting as well.
Any questions from the board? On to number 5, development of the financial markets. Andre's here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So you may be wondering why I'm back here, because you just heard the quarterly update last month. The reason why is that the report was actually due in August, and since we're dark, it was moved to September. September was cancelled, so we went in October. So this is just to keep in line with the next quarter report. This one is due, but I just want to report that there's no real changes to our debt profile since last month. The only thing that's really happened over the last month is the fact that as you know, we have the TIFIA application. We mentioned that we're going to submit it to the office, which we did last week. Along with that, we needed a rating from both rating agencies, from Fitch and S&P. We got a preliminary indication of the A category, which is what we're looking for our third lien. We'll get the final rating once we get the final term sheet from TIFIA, which we expect. Well, actually, we already got the preliminary one yesterday. We expect to go through that and get something final within the next month or so. And we anticipate at this point potentially closing the TIFIA loan as early as January. So there really isn't any other changes to our debt portfolio, and last month.
How much is the TIFIA loan, and what again is its purpose?
Yeah, so the TIFIA loan is mostly for, well, actually exclusively for the Mid-Coast project.
Mid-Coast project.
It's approximately $580 million. And the reason why we're doing a TIFIA loan as opposed to doing the bond financing is for a couple of reasons. First of all, we can put it on a third lien so that it doesn't impact our AAA ratings that we have from Fitch and S&P on our senior lien bonds. Secondly, it's very flexible as far as when you can draw the money and when you have to pay it back compared to a bond. And lastly, it's a lot more affordable. For example, the TIFIA loan is based on the 30-year Treasury at the time plus 1 basis point.
1 plus 30.
So, for example, today I believe the 30-year Treasury is approximately 290, so it'd be 291. Versus the most recent bond deal that we did was at 329 all in. So usually it's going to be cheaper than doing a bond financing. So for those reasons, we're going for the TIFIA line.
You say it's a 30-year Treasury plus 1?
Right.
So it's 3.9, is that right? 2.9
No,
plus 1?
Correct. So today I think the Treasury is kind of moving up. So it's approximately 290. So if we were to execute it today, it would be 290. Right.
Andre, how often does it reset?
That's it.
And it's a fixed rate.
It's a fixed rate, yes.
Fixed rate. Can I get one of those? Thank you, Andre. You're always welcome.
I'm interested to see they took time to negotiate that 1 basis point pattern.
Thank you, Andre. Moving quickly, item 6.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And I, as well, was here last month for the same reason that Andre mentioned. That was the June, now we're doing the September. Although there have been changes with my reports because we have a whole other 3 months.
I apologize. I skipped. We have a public
Oh,
on this.
okay.
If it's okay with everybody, I'd like to take her first. That's right. I apologize.
That's fine, that's fine.
We forgot. So, Catherine. Item 6.
Well, one of the things that I feel that the city of San Diego does is forward cash. And you guys have the, the specific rule where you can only have, I believe it's 30% of your annual revenue come in as your reserves. And I believe that the city of San Diego just gives you numbers and puts them in, but those aren't the real numbers. And the reason I think that is because the numbers don't match any of the information that's in the CAFR. Specifically in the city of San Diego's CAFR, they said that there is, there was a starting balance of $76 million as of July 1st, 2015. Whatever money came in, whatever money goes out. And I just can't get a real clear listing of what it is. And so I would like, when you do this, if somebody's actually against that rule or not doing the rule properly, let me see if I can find it here. It's San Diego Board Policy 31, Rule 17, Section 4. And I believe the City of San Diego has been not in compliance with this for a long time. And I would actually like you to make it very clear. And then also I noticed on the footnote it says it was unaudited. And so what I'd like to see is, starting with the fiscal year 2015 CAFR, show what revenues come in, what expenses go out, what projects are still ongoing, the money hasn't actually been spent yet, and how much unencumbered funds there is, because how I calculated it is very different from what I see in these numbers here. And I'm thinking it should be about $21 million that's still unencumbered, but I don't see it in the paperwork. Thank you.
Shall I continue?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Apologize.
Okay, so as in the past, I'm just going to go through the attachments that we have and stop me and ask questions at any time, okay, for clarification, or if I'm just skipping over something. So attachment 1 is our quarterly report, which is showing all of the revenue side on the left, the allocations broken down by your sales tax or other, which includes interest and possibly some transit one carryover, the ARA swap, to give us our total allocations. And then we have our disbursements, which are going to be the program cost payments to the local agencies, to other Transnet recipients, costs of the program, bank fees, type of costs, and our debt service, to provide the total disbursements for each program, and then some of the programs are broken down by recipient. On page 2 of this attachment, we provide the commercial paper activity to show you the program and recipient on the left of all those that have been part of the extension ordinance commercial paper program to date, and what has been paid to the different recipients. And then on the right-hand side, the CP is going to show you what the current activity is. And that one, you will note that the major corridor and major corridor EMP did fully repay, and that was with the issuance of the 2016 bonds. So we moved the commercial paper debt into the bond, and that freed up, I think, $46.5 million for local recipients. So currently, we only have NCTD and the City of La Mesa that are currently active in the program. We have our other activity, which is, it's a section within the extension ordinance that allows the major corridor EMP program to borrow sales tax from the major corridor program to cover costs, because we advance funded a lot of the land acquisitions on the major corridor EMP program, which was the intent of the ordinance. And then on the next page 3 of the attachment, this is where we're showing you the bonds. So the addition here is we've added the 2016 bonds to provide the current activity. Not a lot going on there yet. A large chunk of what you see would be the repayment of the commercial paper. Then there were some additional draws on the bond. And we've added a note to that. There was a premium on the bond, as Andre mentioned in the last month's report. Any questions on this attachment? Okay. So the next attachment is our local street and road balances. And so we're at the beginning of the year. This is our first quarter, so our column A is going to look a lot smaller, because we only have, it's cumulative, but at the same time it's just has 3 months of the year. And then of course column B is going to be of the estimated revenues. This is the difference between what's estimated for the different jurisdictions and what we've received thus far. So the hope is that we actually receive what's in column B throughout the year. And then giving us our total dispersed to the local agencies. This is SANDAG's numbers. These are our expenditures, what we have paid the local jurisdictions, either to them or program costs. Then we're showing what the cash balances are, what SANDAG is holding on their behalf, and what the local agencies are holding. They provide us these numbers. And then we kind of move over a little bit. I'm going to jump over to H. So this is the programming piece. Now, this is a new RTIP starting this quarter. So the numbers are very different if you were to compare this to the last report that we gave last month, because we're not talking about a whole new RTIP, a lot of reprogramming, readjusting for the 2-year period. And so column I then is telling us what if the jurisdictions used everything that they planned, which the plan would be was programmed, then this is what would be remaining at year end. And then column J, this is always the focal point here. This is the 75% threshold. If all the revenues were to come in and all of the jurisdictions were to spend what they say they are in the RTIP, then this is where they would end the year. And we only have one jurisdiction that did not meet the 75% threshold, barely, 74.5. So the city of Carlsbad did provide you a letter. And in speaking with Marshall, who prepared the letter for you, he did mention that his hope is that by the next quarter that they will meet the 75, and you know, and he fully expects by year end that this number will change dramatically. And of course the jurisdictions that are in bold, those are all in the debt program, and because we advance funds their sales tax through either commercial paper or bonds, their spending is more than 100% of sales tax revenues that have come thus far. Are there any questions on this?
Can you run us through again the definition of column H, the remaining programming? What's the criteria for them to put dollars in that column? This is not your number, I take it. This is what you get. I mean, using San Diego as our classic example.
I'm going to let Michelle respond to that.
So basically, this is the funding that they're showing us that they have on their projects in this fiscal year. So basically, based on the annual revenue that we provided to them, they program based off that and then what their project needs are. And so this is the programming that they have just in 17.
In programming, that means they've identified projects that happen to aggregate to this amount, and they might or might not get all that spent.
Correct.
The fiscal
They
year.
have the 2 year to do it, and if you know they could say that we want to spend it in 17, but they do have the 2 years to spend it. Right.
So the theory is you're supposed to identify specific projects with some degree of an estimate on that, as opposed from just saying to satisfy our needs, we're going to spend it all, trust me, and you'll check with me later.
So yeah, it's basically a plan of what projects that they plan to spend the funding on in that fiscal year.
They get delayed because of their procurement process, everything, then maybe they don't spend anywhere near this much money.
It's possible, yes.
Thank you.
We met with the city of San Diego a couple months ago, and I believe we will be getting a discussion later today on specifically where they're planning to use big chunks of their funds.
I was trying to understand from our public comment here that I didn't quite reconcile what she was saying with what we're looking at here. Is it reconcilable?
We do reconcile it in the programming once the year has closed. But this is basically a forward-looking document for this color.
Moving on to attachment 3. Now we're looking at the sales tax. So we have 3 months at the bottom to show what we've actually received versus the estimates. The cumulative is at the top, but right now, I mean, it's 3 months, so really the focus should just be at the bottom. So we're coming in at 1.2%, looking over the prior year, same period, FY16, first quarter.
Question?
Yes.
On attachment 3, you have a paragraph in the middle.
Yes.
There's a part of the last sentence in that paragraph that's missing, which I really want to know. It says, although some of the state's sales tax revenue decline was offset by declines in the prices paid for construction projects, the decline in construction, and I looked and I don't see where the rest of that sentence is. Could you read it out loud so anybody else would?
All right, so let me just read the whole sentence. Although some of the sales tax revenue decline was offset by declines in the prices paid for construction projects, the decline in construction, and this is where it continues, the decline in construction prices was not sufficient to offset all of the fall in sales tax revenue.
Okay, I was afraid that's what it might say. So what I'm interested in hearing is, since we are basically now going to be in a decline, I want to know what we're doing about it.
So normally Sandag's practice is to wait for 6 months of revenues. So we wait until December. Each quarter there's what we call a true up, where the sales tax that comes in does a correction on the prior revenues that have come in. So there's this little bump in the quarter and month. And so we wait for 6 months, and then Sandag steps back and analyzes, well, what does it look like now, and what does the forward look for the rest of the year? And if there is going to be an adjustment to the revenues, we had one last fiscal year, that's when we start the process. And it's typically in, I want to say it's in February, the board, we would bring it through, and at the February board meeting is when it would be approved, hopefully.
Okay, I'm just curious, since I know that Measure A didn't pass, and we're also have declining revenues, and I know that Richard had brought up in the past making sure we can pay for all the things that we have out there. Have you already, knowing you guys, you probably have you already decided what's going to have to be cut and where if things don't improve?
So maybe I'll take that one. So we take a look at the assumptions, meaning the anticipated revenues, not just Transnet, but anticipated state and federal revenues that match the Transnet dollars to complete all of the measure projects. And we also look at updates to the project costs themselves. We also look at any other changes, changes to interest rates and anticipated escalation costs and things like that. So we take a look at all of these indicators as part of the annual plan of finance. So this is the forward-looking plan that we bring to the ITAC and to the board on an annual basis. The last time that we brought it to you was in January, so we're actually, prepping to, to complete that process and bring it to the ITAC and to the board early part of 2017. And so that's where we take a look at what's changing and how is it changing, and some things may offset others, and so on and so forth. So as you look at how different plans of finance over time, sort of the outcome of that plan of finance, you can see that sometimes we're able to accelerate projects, other times we need to slow down. So those are the kinds of options that we bring to the IPAC and to the board for discussion, just so that everybody is up to speed on where is the plan of finance. So that's what we're planning on doing in early 2017.
One last question. If you are going to be presenting this to us in January, is that too early to tell if the holiday season improved resources, stayed the same, or was less than projections? I don't know when you get do you have to wait till the quarter after December to find out what happened?
Well, I think what we'll try to do actually between now and January is when we're going to be
collecting all of the data, and it's in January when we bring it, or early part of 2017 when we bring it. So during the time that we're preparing the plan of finance, we look at the latest information that we have available at that time. And so, we just try to make it as current as possible. So if we have that information, we'll put it in.
These numbers are always tracking actual versus what I call your most recent estimate. They don't go back and try to track the original baseline estimate when the ordinance was passed. I mean, originally there was a concept of over 40 years that there'd be this much revenue in future dollars, and project costs would be ballpark estimated with so much. Do we have any feel for how we're tracking on that? Relative to our current estimate, that'll go up and down with the economy. But relative to the baseline of what we expected to gain from the ordinance and what we expected to build with that money, track that, or is that relevant to them?
Right. And so that's a very good question, and those are the kinds of questions that we actually take a look at as part of the plan of finance analysis. And it's not just looking at how are we tracking in terms of our last forecast that we did for sales tax, but how are we tracking on all of our assumptions? We want to make it as current as possible. Looking forward, how is this impacting our ability to complete or advance more projects from the measure?
I mean, Karen was talking about the shortfalls in revenue. I personally don't have a feel cumulatively relative to what was expected when we passed the ordinance. Are we short or exceeding that at this point in time?
Right, and part of the plan of finance, looks at revenues, but it also looks at costs and purchasing power and that sort of thing. Yeah.
So far, you said in 2002 dollars, we're 11.7% below the estimated amount through 16. That's a little depressing.
That was your original estimated amount?
Right, but as we go forward with plans of finance, Transnet is one of the revenue sources. But we also, as part of the plan of finance, look at how are we doing on state funds and federal funds, which are also paying for the projects. So this particular statement is just making reference to the sales tax, understanding that sales tax is one of the components that pays for the program.
In other words, they're hoping that the federal government will chip in a fair share, and they're hoping that the state government, of course, that's interesting. We'll eagerly anticipate your January report.
Okay, moving on, attachment 4, this would be the ITOX budget for the year. Once again, first quarter, not a lot of activity happening quite yet. The annual Transnet compliance audits are underway, so you see a little bit of activity there, but otherwise, any questions on that one? And attachment 5. So this is where we're looking at the maintenance piece of the street and road for the local jurisdictions. This is the 30% funding of LSI, and we are one of the questions by the ITAC is always, are they spending more on maintenance than allowable, because the ordinance only allows for 30%. And this spreadsheet here is going to show that. We're showing what has been allocated in sales tax and other funds, the RS interest, and then what's been spent to provide the total balances. Now the difference between columns E and F, so we have our total balances at the end of the quarter, and then we have our cash balances. The difference there may be, so in column F, we have a couple of jurisdictions, their amounts are in bold. And those are going to be, if the local agency has programmed and then spent more than 70% of their LSI, their street and road funds, on congestion relief projects, because we know that they can spend up to 100% if they wish. It's just that they can't spend more than 30% of their funds. So we're tracking that. So for example, the third one down is Coronado. So the city of Coronado, their balance that we track, their 30% balance is 1.4 million. However, there's only a little over $1 million in cash available. So if they requested, let's say they programmed the full 30%, and then they requested it, we could not pay them more than the cash balances that we're keeping, because they spent more than 30% on their congestion relief projects. So that's a check figure that we have ourselves here at Sandag. Any questions on this one? Okay, so moving on to the last attachment that I have, attachment 6. And this is a snapshot of where we are with the Transnet grant programs. So we have the BikePed, also called the Active Transportation Grant Program. We have our Smart Growth Incentive Program, the SGIP, our local environmental mitigation, the local EMP, and the senior mini grant programs. So we have the total revenues received, and that's what we're showing at Sandag. And then we have, BNC is split up a little bit because not all the revenues that have come in are for awarded for grants. We do have some regional projects, and so some of the funds are set aside for that purpose, so we break it out there. We also have what has been paid to the grantees to show you the unspent grant commitment, and that is the number that we know the ITAC has requested in the past. So this is for your monitoring purposes. Are there any questions on this one? No? And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Item 7, City of San Diego. We have a public comment on this. We take public comment first. Catherine?
Hello, Catherine Rhodes again, and I'm from Point Loma. And what I wanted to say to the city is, I actually don't believe the numbers that you gave to Sandag are correct. And the reason for that is I'm trying to follow it starting from the end of the fiscal year 2015 CAFR and figure out how much money you actually have. And I believe you have a lot more money than was shown in the previous item. And then one of the things also that the city of San Diego hoards a lot of cash. In fact, they said they had $737 million worth of cash on hand for CIP projects, but they don't have enough staff to actually do these projects. So the money is actually just piling up. I think there was an additional like $250 million from 2014 to 2015 in extra cash that they have here. And my issue is that what I would like to be able to do is if we see exactly what is unencumbered, not going toward any projects, and to see if that money could go to the homeless or go to the poor. Because state law and city law, those laws say that you can always use extra money from the poor. So I'll do a public records request too, and try to figure out exactly how much money that is. But I was hoping that you guys would say the city of San Diego doesn't spend their money, that it could be used for other things besides transportation because they don't have the staff to actually do these projects. Thank you. And then of course, there was no actual information here, so hopefully we'll get the information. Or item 7, since it was moved to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, one staff here. Thank you guys for coming.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you. My name is Vic Giannis. I'm the Assistant Director for the Transportation Stormwater Department. I have with me today Chris McFadden, the Director of the Transportation Stormwater Department, as well as Ben Pataglia, the Admin and Finance Manager, Program Manager. We also have other city staff here present with us today from Transportation Stormwater Department and Public Works as well to answer any additional questions that you may have. I'd also like to make an announcement. Some of you may recall James Nagelberg, the city engineer. He has actually stepped down from the city engineer role, and actually we have Marnell Gibson, the Assistant Director for Public Works, will be assuming that role. So I wanted to introduce her here this morning as well. I'm happy today to present our first annual report for this fiscal year to ITOC. We have some very excellent news in regards to our execution. So what do we plan to discuss today? So we'll turn the page to the next item here. We plan to give you an overview of our Transnet funding execution. We plan to discuss what projects we have for coming up in 2017. We'll also answer questions raised in the July meeting that you had and answer those questions and just give you an overall summary of our pavement condition assessment. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ben to discuss where we are in regards to our execution of Transnet. Ben?
Thanks, Vic, and good morning, everyone. The City of San Diego receives approximately 38% of the total Transnet local streets and roads revenue annually. In the past, it's been challenging for the city to expend its annual allotments. But with the implementation of our recent cash management strategies, the city has made some significant progress in spending Transnet cash on priority projects. We started FY16 with a fund balance at Sandag of over $55 million. With the $49 million of disbursements last fiscal year, our beginning balance at Sandag for this fiscal year 2017, was approximately $38 million, or a decrease of about 32%. As of June 30th of this year, 2016, our cumulative actuals allocated since 2008, the beginning of Transit Extension, was approximately $241 million. And approximately 203 of that has been dispersed to the city, or 83.4% of the total. Based on our current projections for FY 2017, the city is estimating the cumulative dispersed to be about 90% by the end of the fiscal year. So it's a significant progress that we've made. In the next slide here, this is a Transnet cash flow estimate for this fiscal year. This shows the current fiscal year's projection and also the prior 2 fiscal years' activity. It shows that the city has decreased our balance at Sandag by over $17 million, again 32% in fiscal year 2016, and we project to decrease the remaining balance by an additional 11% this year, or 29% by the end of the fiscal year. Our projected ending balance at Sandag at fiscal year end will be less than 1 year's total allocation, and we're looking at about $27 million. Now, through the first quarter of fiscal year 2017, the current fiscal year, CIP expenditures totaled about $4 million, and we also have $15 million encumbered in projects. These are active projects with the city. We're also on track to fully expend the maintenance, 30% maintenance, the 1% administration, and also our project development and implementation budgets, which is a piece of the congestion relief by the end of the fiscal year. Now, on the next slide here, these are some of our major planned expenditures for the current fiscal year. Avenida de la Playa, Old Otay Mesa Road, and SR 163 Friars Road, they're all projected to expend about $12 million combined this year for construction. And approximately $4 million will be spent on land acquisition for the Otay Mesa Truck Route project. In addition to these 4 major projects here, we also have many other small congestion relief projects that will be expending funds in the current fiscal year. A list of all the active Transnet funded projects have been provided to you in your packet, and we have about 175 of those total right now. So this concludes the portion of my presentation. I'll turn it right back over to Vic.
All right, thank you, Ben. We're going to now move on to ITOC questions that were raised in a July meeting that you had. I understand that Transportation and Stormwater staff did meet with some of the members here. Hassan Yosef is here today with us, Linda Barabian, and Wendy Mora, who's also here with us today. And so I just plan to go over some of the questions here and shed some highlights on what was discussed. So one of the questions on slide 17, there was concerns raised with the lack of detail in our 5-year program of projects. As you know, Transnet funding is one source of city funds that the city uses for the street preservation program. We also use bonds, general funds, Prop 42 replacement funds. The city is currently working on a 5-year street resurfacing plan as part of our budget process. Approximately every year, 300 miles is planned for road repairs each and every fiscal year. Streets are selected based on overall condition index, classification of the road, traffic volume, proximity to public facilities, and the coordination with other right-of-way projects impacting that street. Later in the presentation, I'll share with you what the transit funds have done to help us improve our pavement condition assessment here later on in the presentation. In regards to transit funds used for street maintenance, as been alluded to, 30% of our annual transit allocation is for street maintenance. That has helped us actually repair over 30,000 potholes. We've also used the funds for localized pavement repairs, sidewalk repairs, and traffic control repairs as well. Moving on to slide number 8, there was a question raised about transit funds being spent on preliminary engineering. The city prioritized transportation projects based on community plans, corridor studies, high accident locations, single master plan communication plan, bike master plan, the sustainability plan. Just like many other public agencies, we've done a lot of plans, master plans all over the place. So we've got something exciting. We're actually going to move forward with a project to take all of these plans. Some of them may be in alignment, some of them may not be in alignment in regards to the prioritization. And we're going to take all those plans and put them together and identify, hopefully, which corridors we should have the highest priority to work on. So this is going to be something new to us, and it'll allow us to help prioritize the work that's going on in the city of San Diego. This is called the Strategic Transportation Optimization Program Guide. A lot of words, so we truncated it to the STOP Guide. And it's going to our council here in November. It'll take about 18 to 24 months to complete. In regards to how we prioritize projects, I understand you have a copy of Council Policy 800-14. And we look at this guideline in regards to 8 areas that we focus on: risk, asset condition, community investment, level of quality of service, sustainability, funding for a project, the project necessity, and the bundling opportunities. So we use these guidelines to help us prioritize the work in addition to other information that we gather. In regards to starting a project on time, we do start work when funding is available in the design phase. We move forward with that. When we have funding in the construction, that project then is moved forward. We also use phased funding in the execution of our work using cash management as a tool for us. And moving on to slide number 9, the question was, does the city have a pavement management system? Yes, we do. We use a cartograph, and this has allowed us to actually prioritize, schedule, and move forward the work on our street work. It's been very beneficial and helped us achieve the execution of our road repairs. We also use another program, software program called ICAT, the Interactive Mapping Coordination Action Tool, that requires both work that's done in our right-of-way, done by private development, as well as the city, to place that information on our map to help us better coordinate all the right-of-way work on our streets. That way we're not impacting our streets all at once. We're helping plan the work so that we aren't ripping up the streets when pavement repairs are done. Moving on to slide number 10, discrepancy in the Transnet Local Street and Roads Annual Report. We agree, we interpreted this to mean something differently, and complete list of all our transit funded projects was not included in the 2015 report, but you should have that in your package here today, and we plan to remedy this by providing this information on future reports to you. So that handout should be provided. It should look like this here, actually. It should be part of the attachment. Looks like this.
The last, it's this one?
That is correct, yes.
The last page of that back section.
All right. Thank you. And moving on to slide number 11, our pavement condition assessment. The city has performed a pavement condition assessment survey since 2000. The assessments are performed every 4 to 5 years. The first comprehensive assessment was done in 2011, include all of our paved streets and alleys. And this was completed actually a number of weeks ago. And this assessment gives us, again, a pavement distress and ride quality and signs an overall condition and OCI for each street segment. Since 2011, we had an OCI assessment of 59. We're happy to report, after this report was done in 2016, we have an overall condition assessment of 72, actually. And we completed last fiscal year 322 miles of road repairs, a historic number for the city of San Diego. The transit funds, with the use of other local funds, have helped us meet our OCI goal, but there's still continued work that needs to be done. In regards to mapping tools, some of you may be aware that the city just rolled out our street pavement mapping tool. It can actually be found on our website. You can see it right there at the bottom here. And so it'll give residents an opportunity to see their OCI segment street condition, and also give you other information on when we plan to roll out other segments of our streets for repairs. We're also in the process of rolling out a sidewalk mapping tool as well. It should be coming out here in the near future as well. So that moves us to our last slide, our summary. Our transit funding improves the quality of life for those that work and live in the city of San Diego. It supports 100% of our transit projects, and we've shared with you what we are planning to do in the next fiscal year. It's helped us improve our OCI from 59 to 72. And as Ben alluded to, it's increased our fund balance by $17.6 million in fiscal year 2016. And we are on track to achieve 9% cumulative execution here at the end of the fiscal year. So that concludes our presentation today, and we're available to answer any questions you have.
There's going to be quite a few.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Kevin?
Hi.
Of course, ladies first.
Thank you. Exactly 1 year ago, 1 year and 4 days ago, we had a presentation by the city, and you actually had a very similar slide, the slide on page 5.
5 or 4?
It says 5-year fiscal year 2017 planned major expenditures. If you put up that slide, well, guess what? Last year, you had the same slide and you proposed to spend the money this year. My question is this, because we've always been rather disturbed by the fact that the city of San Diego doesn't seem to be able to spend the money. Why did the exact project show up last year and you planned to spend the money in 2016? Now the same slide shows up and you have delayed a year. So my question is, why the delay, and how can I trust that you're actually going to do it?
So I don't have last year's slide in front of me, so I can't see which project you're referring to.
They're the same one.
Okay. Perfect, thank you very much. Okay, so last year's slide has State Route 163 Friars Road improvements, disbursement to Caltrans for $12 million. On our slide this year, we also have State Route 163 Friars Road. This $2 million is actually in addition to the $12 million that was spent last year. So that full $12 million has been dispersed to Caltrans for construction. Okay. For Old Otay Mesa Road improvements, it states here construction award, $6 million encumbered. And at that, during last year, it was encumbered. And this year, we are saying that we plan to expend $4.8 million on construction. We actually plan to expend it this year. So last year, we're saying we were encumbering the $6 million. This year, we're going to be expending the $4.8. And let's see, the last one here is
Excuse me, can you just add a little color there to the definition of encumbering and spending? What was the need for the time lag between the encumbrance and the spending? Is that just a delay in your procurement cycle, or what's that all about?
We encumber the funds for our construction contract, so there is a delay between when the funds are encumbered and when they're actually expended by the contractor.
A year? Is it usually a year? I'm just curious.
I would probably defer to Public Works on that for that particular project.
The city's practices have historically been to completely fund a project up front. Although the project may take 3 years to construct, we have to fully fund it up front unless you have enterprise funding, which has a steady income that is generated every single year. So we approve an annual budget, and we can only approve then for a project's entirety. But we are working with financial management and comptrollers to be able to certify funds in a phased project approach. And Vic had mentioned one of those streamlining measures. So we are changing that practice. Transnet is a relatively safe and steady income, so we can utilize that practice now to basically encumber the funds that we need on hand for that year, and then the next year encumber those funds that we need on hand for the following year in order to move through the construction, draw down the cash as we need it. So it's a practice that we are in the process of changing.
I got your proposal reports, and you are, what's your name?
I'm sorry, my name is Marnell Gibson. I'm the Assistant Director for Public Works and the City Engineer.
So, anybody else coming up, if you just identify yourself, I appreciate it.
All right, can we have the city folks please introduce yourself and what department?
Karen McGrath, Deputy Director with the Public Works Department.
Michael Clark, Budget Coordinator, Financial Management.
Good morning, I'm Christy Reeser. I'm the Deputy Director in Street Division.
Eddie Del Rio, Financial Management Analyst. Good morning, Hassan Yusuf, Acting Deputy Director, Environmental Services Department, and this is a special assignment. My actual assignment is the Deputy Director in Transportation Stormwater Department.
Matt Westby, Acting Director of Financial Management in the city.
Paz Gomez, Deputy Chief Operating Officer for Infrastructure and Public Works for the city.
Just so I'm sure I understand, you encumber or you commit the capital to a project. Do you then start your procurement for that project? I'm trying to think if the projects are all different, but what's the duration between you're making your capital commitment and before a contractor will actually start, or engineering firm will spend money?
All right, I'll give you an example. So what we do is we advertise and award the project, which takes roughly 3 months. And then we go through the encumbrance process to award that contractor to the lowest responsible bidder. So it's at that point in time that we need to fully fund that contract. So let's say we end up with a contract that's $10 million. We have to fund that up front, but the scheduling of that contract may take 3 years for actual construction. So we have in that account then $10 million committed, and then every year after that, on average, the contractor may be drawing down roughly $3 million if, in that example, if it were a $10 million project and straight lined it. So we have this practice that we have utilized because we don't want to assume the risk. That's been the position. Now we're looking at other options to fund it. So we draw down, we have on hand what we need. So a new practice would be you would only encumber that $3 million that first year, draw it down the next year, encumber the $3 million. So we operate off of an annual budget process that's approved through council. So those are some of our constraints that we have to work within delivering a CIP project that doesn't live within an annual budget process.
Two follow-up questions, and if I'm understanding what you're saying is you in essence run through your procurement, select a winner, but before you can award the contract, at that point in time you encumber the money.
That's when you encumber it into an account that's basically an agreement. It's our commitment to pay that contractor that.
And if you go to your new improved model where you'll do this incrementally, if I'm the contractor, I'm still getting, in your example, I'm getting my $10 million commitment from you, and you're just keeping the books, $3 million, $3 million, $3 million.
Correct.
Just to follow up, the gentleman who proposed this last year with the slide copy that I gave you basically said the same thing, that they hoped in 2016 to make sure that this was implemented. So what you're telling me is now it is implemented, that you don't have to fund the whole thing?
Yes, no, we are, and I will say we are going through a risk assessment. We have multiple different asset types of moving into that. So we've been working with our Chief Financial Officer, comptrollers, financial management, to ensure that we don't place the city at risk. If you look at federal funding, the commitment is to have an asset that can be completed and utilized, any chunk of that phasing. So it's a similar type of a process, but for example, when you're building a bridge, you can't really build part of a bridge. So you need to have a cash management strategy. If for some reason that funding fell through, you have a backup plan.
Also, if I might add, for this project, we were just actually on site a couple weeks ago. It's an extremely complex project where we're doing a road, we're actually doing sidewalks, we're doing lighting, we're actually doing stormwater best management practices adjacent to environmentally sensitive land. So this is actually really like a whole street project. We even looked at utilities that would have to be replaced ahead of time and work with public utilities department. So we're just going to be digging this street up once for many, many years. So it's a very complex project. But you know, as you can see, we've really executed just in the last year. We've even exceeded what we were projecting. So this has been really high priority for us. I think especially if you compare us to the other cities, you can see we're doing especially well. So we will continue, of course, the commitment. We do provide updates regularly to our city council through a financial management department, which are available, of course, to you as well. So, but this is definitely a very high commitment for us, and I think we've seen a lot of success.
You know what would be helpful is, because I usually keep your presentations, so it's disturbing to me if it looks like the same thing. If you would have something to show me, okay, well, last year we said this, now here's what we've really done in the year. Otherwise, I think it's just, you know, another slide that you showed me last year.
And getting from encumbrances to construction.
Yes, I mean, that doesn't show me on that.
I think that's a great recommendation. I would add to that, we should bring you pictures of the progress of the projects.
You mean we can actually see that the ground was broken, that kind of thing?
Or if you would like to come out and have a tour, we would be happy to offer that too. But I think that would help you visualize where your dollars are being spent.
Can I add just one more thing? Twice a year, in coordination with financial management and controllers, we move budgets within the projects. If a project, for some reason, we project to spend $10 million and it's not going to be able to spend that $10 million during the fiscal year, we take out some of that budget and move it into some other project. We do this twice a year. This is part of our cash management plan.
And to add to that, we meet every month to go through that exercise to figure out. A lot of times, Transnet can also be a fund source that's a grant match. So we spend the grant down first, and the Transnet is the last thing to be spent, and so it can sit there for an extended period of time. So we're looking at the best way to draw down multiple fund sources with timelines on it. So this is an exercise, actually, we meet on a monthly basis to go through that.
That's good. Thank you.
And I do have some pictures if anybody wants to.
I trust her. I trust her.
Good. First of all, Vic, thank you very much for joining us and the whole staff of the city of San Diego. Not all of us. Not all of us. I'm the guy that sort of asked for the meeting and sent an email out with our concerns, and it was a very good meeting in August. Did you say that Linda is here?
Linda's not here, but we have Hassan here.
I know, Hassan and Linda were there.
And Randy, actually.
And we appreciated that. And basically, my observations and a couple of questions. This was an hour-long meeting in which I learned a great deal. And first of all, the five things that I'm pleased about, if I may. I'm not as organized as you were, Vic. I didn't know what you were going to be bringing up. I'm pleased that your expenditure rate is coming down, your carryover rate is coming down. I'm pleased that you have a pavement management system. We discussed that, and we were wondering about that. I understand a little better why you can't be too specific in some of these general maintenance projects that you have listed on the RTIP. One thing that I think Hassan mentioned was that, and Alex, were that you have a maintenance crew that is, there's several maintenance crews that travel regularly through the city, and that they visit each district at least once a month, traveling the streets, making their own notes, and taking care of repairs as they go along, so that they don't need to wait for complaints from the citizens.
If I can add too, we have also a legion of citizens now with our app. So they're doing a lot of our work for us too, notifying us where there are discrepancies in the right of way. So if you're not aware of that, that's also on our website, and we would encourage you to use that app as well. It just helps us get to the
Yes,
issues.
we do have an app that was mentioned. I saw that in the paper, as a matter of fact. I'm pleased that about your OCI overall condition improvement from 59 to 72, and that you want to keep it up there. That is new, and I'm delighted to hear that.
Jonathan, can I interrupt you? Just ask you to expand, and maybe you can expand a bit on that. What is that measurement? And is it 72 out of 100, 500, 1,000? Where are we relative? I see the improvement, but I don't know how to measure it.
The 72 is a rating that we've come up, and it includes the distress on the surface and the rideability. And these are standards that the industry has looked at. And so 72 is a category of good in regards to our road. It doesn't mean we're done yet.
What's the scale?
It's out of 100.
70 to 100 is good.
Yeah. And so it doesn't mean we're done yet. As you know, streets deteriorate with time, so we've got to continue on with our efforts to improve our roads. But we've been able to do a fantastic job with the amount of work we put out on the streets, and both on our crews and also with the contractors doing the work.
Well, I'm also pleased that your year-end report is going to be listing next year's RTIP projects that you'll be working on. I can understand that there was a misunderstanding, and that will help us to reconcile the RTIP planned expenditures with what you show on your year-end report. And I, for one, will look at that. Please be aware. So give it some thought. I guess I just have two questions. This strategic transportation optimization guide, that's an awful lot of big words. And it's going to take 12 months to 24 months to do. Can you explain in simple English what you're going to do with that guide?
Yes. As I said in the presentation, the city, like many other public agencies, has many, many master plans. I'm sure Sandag has the same thing. And so we're going to take all of those past plans through the years and have a team actually go through them and prioritize what actually is priorities with all of our corridors in the city. And the 80-20 rule, when things line up, it will help the city as a tool identify the primary corridors we need to focus on to give us the biggest bang for the buck. So we'll also be looking at Sandag's reports as well as Caltrans's reports, and see where that aligns. And that will be a tool for city staff to pursue grants, look at what projects need to be done in those corridors to help us maximize the benefit for as many of the items that we have, whether it's mobility, bikes, buses, connectivity, all of those issues will be addressed. So this will be a significant, actually, tool for us to help us prioritize the work in the city.
Thank you. We did ask Linda and Hassan for a list of your backlog, and I guess we're getting it, and we thank you for that. I'm pleased to see something. I'll sit here and look this over and see if some of my favorite sweets are on it. All right, well then, two questions. Well, that was the first question. And the other question, somewhere in my conversations with you folks, it was either with James earlier or perhaps it was at this meeting, I had the feeling that you sort of had a goal of carrying over approximately 1 year's of allocations. Did I misunderstand that? You receive about $25 to $27 million a year in Sandag funds. And is it true that this is sort of your goal because of planning purposes, that you'd like to be carrying over about that much each year?
Our ultimate goal is not an entire year's worth of revenue. We would like to get that lower. By the end of this fiscal year, we will be lower than one year's allocation at $27 million. We would like to get it even lower than that. You know, there's kind of a gray area of what it should be. Definitely don't want it ever to be zero, but we want it to be as close to zero as we can.
Okay. Well, I think that's fine. Well, it was a good meeting that we had in August. Thank you all for coming. thank you for coming today. That concludes my quick extemporaneous comments. Did you have any more?
Yeah, I did. Two questions. Do you have any feel for what amount of money the city pays each year from claims from citizens for damage to their cars because of the road conditions?
No, we have to get back to you on that. Let's get back to you. That's with our risk management department.
I'm not looking for a precise number. I was looking for a ballpark. Is it $100 or is it a $10 million?
Depending on each case, it could be significant, could be minor, depending
But
on.
they're not aggregate dollars spent a year.
Okay,
We have to, for just for the vehicle damage.
Yeah.
It's not significant. It's not significant.
It's not significant.
In the scheme of,
Okay, I was just curious.
relation to the total number of claims that we pay out of risk management of our public liability fund each year, the amount paid for car damage, vehicle damage is pretty insignificant. It's less than $1 million.
Oh, in the aggregate?
Yep.
And another comment, it was on your slide, and you mentioned a couple times in the oral presentation that you're on track to achieve a 90% cumulative dispersal by fiscal year end. I would ask you to give some thought to whether that's really a meaningful measure. In the passage of time, 90% of a hugely growing number doesn't tell me a great deal. The only thing that's relevant, I would think, if we look back 3 years, I would hope that the cumulative at that point in time would have been at this and that 100%. And it's just what you're dealing with the last 2 or 3 years of appropriations, to add them all together and report on a cumulative basis.
Sure. The reason I brought that up.
10% delinquency of a 10-year program, that's a huge amount of money.
The reason I brought that up and put that metric in is to show our progress over the last 2 or 3 years. We were, a few years ago, we were below 75%. And so with our cash management strategies, budgeting to projects that are actually going to be expending in those fiscal years, along with all our other streamlining measures, we've been able to increase that now up to approximately 90% projected by.
It's good news, but if my brain is working this early this morning, it's just a passage of time. Cumulatively, you're going to get there without any improvement.
Yeah.
Percentage is going to get higher.
Sure.
So it doesn't tell me anything. So you might give some thought if there a more meaningful metric than that.
Okay.
I don't think it tells me.
Can you tell us, where is James? Did he leave the city or
No.
another position?
He's still in the same position. He wanted to pass down the reins to Marnell to handle the city engineer functions, so he's still the director of public works. So
He's still the director.
Yes, if you'd like him to come back, we'll be happy to invite him. He would love to be part of it.
He loves it.
I would hope that you, the city, you don't need to bring the whole city engineering department, but I would hope that you would come back again in a 6-month period and tell us how you're doing, if the committee agrees.
What about a year?
We were
But
at
because they
6
can't do-
months, but you've asked us to come back yearly, so.
Yes, we did.
Is that
Remember,
what we
yeah,
have?
last November, we decided once a year, because look at all the taxpayer dollars sitting in this room now for salaries, right?
All right, then certainly we'll live with that. We'll see you in a year then. Thanks.
This document that you had at the last page of your package here is a list of projects. And Jonathan, you described it as backlog. Is that things that...
Is it this list that you're referring to?
Yeah, is it your wish list? You haven't started dealing with those yet?
No, this is a list of projects that are currently active and have transit budgets allocated to them. So we're actively working on about 175 transit-funded projects at this point, and this is a list of those projects.
If you had to characterize what's your overall constraint in moving forward, is it a lack of funding, or is it the lack of project management, procurement management abilities to utilize the funding that's available?
If I can answer that, as with all large projects or small, there are right-of-way issues for covering property, there's environmental issues, there's coordination with other agencies and so forth. So that is taking up a little bit of our time in regards to executing the work.
That's all natural aspects of a project.
Part of the process.
But are those activities that you need to do before you encumber, or is it encumbered and then those are all the necessary projects to execute?
Yeah, they're all occurring at different phases in a project during planning, design, and actual construction. But before we actually do any construction, we need to have the appropriate environmental clearances and the right-of-way security.
Thank you guys very much.
All right, so the action item I have to come back our next one-year anniversary here is to provide a table or a graph showing what we've accomplished and what we're moving forward, and pictures. So we'll be happy to put that on our next.
And don't try to escape with my list, okay?
Oh, no, I'll bring that right back to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us. Moving on to item 8. This here gives an overview on the Transnet dashboard.
Just getting sick. All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So it's been a while since we have talked about the Transnet dashboard at the iTalk meetings. Over the past several years, there has been some significant development on the functionality of the dashboard. So over the past several years, there has been some significant development on functionality of the dashboard, and we thought that it might be really appropriate at this time to give you an overview of the current dashboard. That's why we're going to be going through some of this right now. So the dashboard was launched back in 2006. The early dashboard, the purpose of that early dashboard was to bring in a vast amount of project information, both from Caltrans and from Sandag. Budgets and schedules and other types of information was brought into a common platform, and more importantly, this information was organized in a manner that could be very easily understood by public, iTalk, and the project teams. In other words, we were trying to provide the transparency and the accountability to the public of where is the money spent and what's the progress that we are making out of the money that is being spent. Now here's a quick history of the development of the dashboard, a quick timeline. Launched in 2006. In 2009, we added the environmental mitigation program, which basically manages the land acquisition and the regional conservation of the habitats. That's the key functionality of the EMP dashboard that got added. Around 2010, we added another new functionality called the reports. These are canned reports that a project manager could or staff could run at any time and get information related to their projects. They could use this information either to manage their projects or to have a meeting with the senior management, because the information was rolled up at a fairly high level, budget and schedules and variances and so on. So they could use these reports to have a meeting with the senior management or for themselves. Around that time, we authenticated the dashboard as well, meaning prior to that, what we had was a public-facing dashboard. It was the public that could, which is available today as well, but they could log into or not log in, but just go into the website and take a look at the project progress. Around 2010, we added the report functionality and also the authentication of the dashboard, where only a person with a username and a password could basically get into the dashboard. In 2013, we added some project management functionality, meaning the project managers could use some of the tools in there for project management purposes. I think one of the most significant developments of the dashboard got added in 2014, which was the budget management module. This is the module that we use for the annual CIP updates, or if there is a change request mid-year. That's the module that manages and collaborates with the project teams on how we manage the CIP budgets. So that's a quick timeline of the development areas over the past 10 years or so. So at this point, I think I'm going to go into the live tool, and let's go through some of the screen motions to see what we have in the dashboard. All right. So most of you are really familiar with the KeepSanDiegoMoving.com website. This is a website that provides project information, I would say, at a fairly high level. This is where you can get your fact sheets, your budgets and schedules at a fairly high level. So this is where it starts with the KeepSanDiegoMoving.com. And what we are trying to get in today is a slightly deeper level. We are trying to dive into a slightly deeper level where we will be getting information of the individual projects, the individual CIPs. And that's what happens through the dashboard. So this is where we get into the public-facing dashboard by clicking on the Transnet dashboard. All right. So to talk a little bit about the organization or the structure of the dashboard, up at the top it says program, and currently there are 4 programs that are being housed within the dashboard. The Transnet, then we have the LoSAN program, the Regional Bikeway, and the ENP that I talked about a little bit earlier. So those are the 4 different programs that we are currently monitoring within the dashboard. And then the next level down from the program will be the corridors, because each of the programs will consist of multiple corridors. For example, the Transnet program has 11 corridors, the I-5s, the 15s, 805s, so on and so forth. And then there's another level below the corridor level. So at the corridor level, you just quickly click over here. If you go to the drop down, you will see 11 corridors. And the next level down will be the segment level. The segment levels are the CIP levels, the individual projects. So if I do a drop down here, you could see that I counted this yesterday. We have about 87 85 CIPs just within the Transnet program. All right, so in addition to that, we also have CIPs within the Bikeway program as well. Now, to kind of go through the functionality, I'm going to do that at a program level, because at a program level, things are kind of averaged out, and you have a better sense, a better feel for how things are behaving as far as your budgets and your schedules are concerned. So let's take a look at the program level. The functionality is down here at this, along with these tabs. You could see a snapshot tab, which is nothing but the current status of your budget and your schedule for that particular program. For in this case, for the Transnet program, you could see that through the dial gauges and through the color lights, they're showing what the budget phase is. Where the budget phase is, it's all green, looking good. And for the schedule phase, it's the amber, and that basically shows the budget and the schedule status. Now, if you have a question of like what triggers these color lights, we have provided a help menu at this point. We can go back and click that and take a look at what are the mechanisms that would trigger the color lights essentially. Okay, so let me just get back to it. The next tab shows the cash flow. It takes a little while to change the tabs, so please bear with me on that. So
How often is it updated?
the information is updated monthly, because we work with the project teams, with the PMs, with the consultants, and update the project information every month. All right, there we go. So that gives you a picture of what the budget numbers are like. Now, if you look at the donut at the left, you could see that these are all the CIP budget phases, and As you would see, the brown piece of the donut is the highest budget, which is the construction capital. And over here is a S-curve or a cumulative curve that compares your planned expenditures, which is the red line, versus there's another blue line that's kind of hugging the red line, which shows what your actual expenditures are month after month. So we tap into the financial, or the one solution, which is Sandag's financial database, and it's automatically populating or creating that blue line that you see. So it's a good comparison of where we had planned to be versus where we currently really are. It looks fairly good. Down here is the funding information, the different types of funding that we have been using in the Transnet program. We could see the Transnet funding in red, the state, federal, and the local funding. So this is using the Transnet funds to leverage some of the other types of funding that we're seeing here. And this is the same information, but in more detail, the amounts. Quickly getting into the schedule tab here, that shows essentially, it compares your baseline schedules. We call that the ITOP baseline. The yellow lines that you see there are called the baseline schedules. These baseline schedules reflect the initial envisioning of how this project is going, or the timeline that this project is going to take. And the blue line shows the current schedule, meaning when we get the information month after month from the project teams, we tend to update the schedule, and that's the blue line. And here are the schedule and the light status. And again, as I said earlier, what triggers these would be, in the case of the schedule, it is how much have you deviated from your original plan? How much have you deviated from the baseline plan? And that is what really triggers a red, yellow, or a green. And again, we have provided that the measures or the metrics that triggers that in the help menu up here. Next tab is the budget history, which essentially shows the size of the program, I would say, the program budget over time. And you could see that this is at about 6.5 billion right now. Around, say, 2012 to 2013, you could see that there is an increase, which is lining up with the construction that was taking place. There was significant construction on the low sand corridor, as well as, I think around that time, we also started some of the design work with the mid-coast. All that combined together is kind of increasing that, increasing the program budget. And that's what the steep curve is about. So this is all within the public-facing dashboard. The public can go into the site anytime and take a look at these. Now I'm going to quickly dive into the authenticated dashboard, which we call as the internal dashboard. And that is limited to people that we assign a username and a password. Everybody cannot get into that level and get the information. So it's mainly a project management tool, and also it has some specific reports that will help us for the ITOP, and like presenting what we call as the corridor director meetings and so on. So really quickly, I have already logged into it. How you log into that is by clicking on this dial here and assigning a username and a password. But I already did that, because typically in a presentation like this, when you try to log in, something can go wrong, and you get hung up. So here it is. So there are some additional tabs to what you saw earlier, what are called the reports. These are the canned reports I had mentioned earlier. So by clicking on this tab, oops, I told you that, right? Let me go back and try to log in here. There you go. All right. So by going into the reports tab, these are all the canned reports that we have developed for the project managers. And these came about through the need. You know, the dashboard in general was developed over time based on the need. You know, either Caltrans or project managers came up with business rules and business needs, saying, hey, we would like to see this kind of a report there. Can you include that? We included those reports. People were talking about the risk registries. We included that. So it was developed, based in time, developed over time, based on what was needed for the program. So those are all the canned reports. And here is the area that deals with or presents the project management capability. Without getting into too much, you know, it has so many different kind of areas: document libraries, action items, risk registries, best practices, and the budget request or the budget change request. This is the module I kind of talked to you about a little earlier. Every fiscal year, every CIP cycle, this is heavily used by our project managers, and Susan is the one who owns that module. And so it helps us to manage the CIP budgets. And the best practices is a module where we store all the information that we have an internal project management training program. It's called a PM training program that we've been conducting for about 2 years now. And all the lectures or all the sessions that we have are being stored here as an on-demand or as needed basis. People can log into that, read what the best practices are. How do you build a schedule? How do you build a independent cost estimate? Those are all stored here. And the document library is a collaborative platform. You know, sometimes, you know, Caltrans works on a document, we work on a document. It's a platform to store these collaborative documents and collaborate with individual groups. So that's a real 30,000-foot overview of the internal dashboard. And there's one thing I would like to show as the last thing, and that is the usage of the dashboard. We are tracking the usage of this dashboard over the fiscal years. Now you could see that back around in 2010. You know, so what we are showing here are the pages built, not the number of individuals who log into the site. One person can log in and have multiple pages built at any time. So it shows that back around in 2010, when we deployed the reports, the usage increased. And back around in 2013, we instilled or we incorporated the project management tools. And that kind of went up, and this information is as of October 31st. So this is 2016, and this might go up a little bit more by the end of the year. So that's, you know, I mean, that's a fairly decent amount of pages being visited. That's a fairly decent amount of pages, about 100.
There's not public and project management internal.
Correct. Cumulative together, because it's very difficult to, according to the people who are managing, it's differentiate to tell where the hits are coming from. You can just accumulate the hits, but it's difficult to tell where it's coming from. So that's a little bit of where we are at with dashboard. Any questions?
I had my only question.
Of course.
That was my question.
That was your question. Yeah.
I don't have the other side. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
On to item number 9. And this is the combination, giving an overview of a completed project. Is that correct? Or completed projects?
Yes.
First, you all can introduce yourselves as you speak You don't have to do it all now.
Good morning. I'm Tracy Furshaw. I'm a project coordinator for the Smart Growth and Active Transportation projects. As you recall, we did give a quarterly report on our projects, and in October we did that. And I wanted to highlight some of the projects that are closing. We're coming to a milestone in some of our programs here, that our Cycle 2 projects are closing. Since our last reporting, the one that we presented in October, an additional 5 Cycle 2 projects have closed. And altogether we had 38 projects in Cycle 2, and 36 of them are complete, with the last 2 remaining projects to be completed by the end of July of this year. So we thought we would take the opportunity to ask some of our jurisdictions if they would like to showcase or highlight some of the completed projects, so that you can see where the Transnet money is going to. So anyway, here today to highlight some of the Cycle 2 Smart Growth completed projects are Greg Mora, presenting on La Mesa Downtown Village Streetscape Improvement Project, and Kathleen Brand will be presenting on Civic San Diego's East Village Green 14th Street Master Plan. I'm sorry, I do apologize. We also had another presentation for a National City, their Downtown Westside Community Connections. Brad Ralston was going to be presenting that, but he was unable to attend today. But I do want to point out that you do have the slides in your packet today. So, and we can also ask him to come in and present to you what his project in that city is, if you'd like us to do so. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Greg Mora, presenting on La Mesa.
Greg Humora, Director of Public Works for City of La Mesa. Thanks for having me here this morning. Very excited to present the project after. I've done dozens of presentations on this project before, what we were going to do, when we were going to do it, how long were we going to be in front of your store, how long were we going to have the sidewalks ripped up, and I'm now happy to report that we're all done. We did what we said when we were going to do it, how we're going to do it, and it's all open for business right now. So I've got some pictures for you. Okay. Here's a before shot. And what we did was we redid the La Mesa Downtown Village. It's basically a 5-block area between Acacia and 4th Street. So there's 2 blocks to the west of the trolley and then 3 blocks to the east of the trolley. We've got the trolley and the trolley station right in the middle of the downtown village. So we basically redid the entire 5-block area in the downtown village. We had tried to grow trees in the downtown village before and in La Mesa, but sometimes trees can be challenging to grow in. There's utilities in the way, there's rocks, there's other types of things. So we had come up, this was not my design, but we had come up with a way to try to grow trees, and this is a raised planter. It was not very successful, and you can see it's actually been kissed a few times by several automobiles, and actually subject to a lawsuit where a small claim came in from a truck, and I had to go to court over this, and I had design immunity as my defense, which the judge said, yeah, you're right, but I don't want to see you back here again, get that thing out of there. So here's, again, we tried to grow trees. This is a tree in the middle of 2 parking spaces. It's out towards the middle of the street, again, avoiding utilities, but you can see it's had an allergic reaction to vehicles when they get a little too close to it. So can you count the different types and colors of concrete in this picture? I count about 5. So that's what we're dealing with. Old infrastructure. You can see the street light boxes out there. It's old street lights, and it was unreliable electrical system, really, really challenging. It was time to redo the infrastructure. So what was our scope of work? We wanted to improve the walkability. We wanted to replace the electrical, replace the street lights, replace the street trees, and basically enhance the public space down there. It's used heavily by the community, and it's really La Mesa's civic cultural core. We added event power We have the Oktoberfest, which was recently held, very successful in the downtown La Mesa. We do car shows, we do Holiday in the Village, Antique Street Fair, and those events need a lot of electricity. And before we had, we were jumpering into the back of buildings, we had cables everywhere, the fire marshal, the electrical guys were going crazy, this is dangerous. So now we have event power at all the street corners, so they can just basically come in, plug in. We spent a lot of money on the infrastructure so that we could use the event space more effectively and properly. I'm going to talk a little bit about trees now and stormwater. So I showed you how we tried to grow trees before. The trees that we did have were successful, but their roots were very successful also, and they tended to damage the sidewalk. They were growing into buildings, they were lifting the street up, because they did not, the trees themselves didn't have adequate infrastructure. So we did a lot of research and we looked into this, and what you typically do when you plant a tree is you just stick it into a little 4x8 hole. And that 4x8 hole is about 148 cubic feet. And we found that trees, they need more space than that. They really want 1,000 cubic feet of soil to grow. Well, that's a lot of space. But we found something called a silvocell, which is a black plastic structural component. And what we did was we placed them all around as much as we could where those trees were going to be placed. So the silvocell can work its way around utilities. We put regular soil, so the soil is not just where the tree well is, it goes all around where that silvocell is supposed to go as well. Giving the roots a place to go, they could grow down, good soil. Also, we filtered the stormwater through there. We have inlets in the gutters, and we have permeable pavement as well. And there's a drain system after the water if it's not all used by the trees. So it's irrigated, we get stormwater treatment credits, and if you go down there, the trees are doing extraordinarily well. I'm really, really pleased that we've had to trim them a couple times. They're just thriving down there, so it's really exciting. Here's a picture of those silvocells, plastic structural cages. They're not cheap to put in. It basically quadruples the cost of putting a tree in, but you can see all the space that's now available for stormwater treatment and for root growth. So here's a picture of the street condition after. We put bulb outs at all the intersections. This creates a narrowing effect for pedestrians, makes it safer for the pedestrians, helpful for the drivers to slow the traffic down. It also creates space for landscape features. It creates space for sidewalk cafes, furniture, and trees. We put in brick crosswalks. That's a all brick crosswalk out there. It's got an organic feel to it. We wanted people to have a sense of place. When cars are driving over it, there's a little bit of a tactile feeling so that the vehicles know that they're in a pedestrian area. And also, in case something were to break, we can pull it out and put it back in. It's sustainable. We also reduced the roadway crown. There's a concrete road base underneath there. We took it down as far as we could to that concrete road base and then just brought it up a little bit. Again, because this is event space, there's pedestrians, there's wheelchairs, there's strollers walking in here, so we wanted to flatten the world as much as we could in La Mesa. We had wide ped ramps. All of our ped ramps are 10 feet wide. That way you can get strollers passing in opposite directions next to each other, plenty of space for wheelchairs. And we added bollards to all of those ped ramps as well. Also, these bollards that we used are removable, and when we want to close the street down, we can pick up the bollards and put them into a concrete van in the middle of the street. So we have built-in traffic control features to the street. We have new bike racks downtown. You can see our city logo in the middle of that bike rack. We have put in custom benches, and also we spent a lot of money on our tree grates. We spent so much money on our tree grates that the vendor gave us logos built into the tree grates for free. We put gateway string lights at 5 different intersections in downtown. The lights are all connected. They talk to each other. They're super duper fancy. My engineers went a little bit over the top on this. We're still figuring out exactly how to program the things. But here's the 4th of July. They were red, white, and blue. Typically they're white, but on Halloween they go to purple and yellow, or purple and orange, thank you. You saw them?
I live in La Mesa.
And last night they were red, white, and blue for the election. Christmas, they go to red and green. We can program to do whatever. So they're, as long as they're working, they're really, really cool. And then how do we pay for it? Who's that in the middle right there? You know who that is? That's not on my sheet right here. That's the mystery. Can you guess that? My presentation's been booby-trapped.
Contributed a little bit, obviously.
Thank you so much for the $2 million.
Yeah.
The Smart Growth Grant put our funding over the top. We used $1 million in quarters from our parking fund downtown because we have a parking district. Transit Development Administration, there's bus stops, and I mentioned the trolley stop right around nearby us. We did some sewer work to fix some of the underground infrastructure beforehand, and then gas tax and Transnet money. This is an artist rendering of what's called the Lookout Park on the right. We just had our centennial in 2012, and we raised a whole bunch of funds for some public art and some event space. And that was part of, not part of the construction of the project, but we said we're going to be building this as a sense of place in the downtown village. So that was the artist rendering of what we were going to get. And then here's the after condition. So you can see it's pretty darn close. This is La Mesa's first venture into public art. We received a lot of, what is that? But all in all, it's been very well received. People are sitting out there every day. They're walking their dogs and animals through there. We have a clock that was donated. It's a really, really neat public space for us. And it's surrounded by businesses. You can see the string lights right there. This is Felix, the Helix aspersa snail. And Felix and his ancestors were developed up on Mount Helix. And a scientist discovered and named the Helix aspersa snail. That's where Mount Helix comes from. So whenever you hear Helix, it's actually talking about a snail. And you can see the Helix on his backside right there. So he's art, he's really cool. But don't sit on him when it's really, really warm out. He's a little bit warm. We have a little sign that says that. So here's the really cool part. We're done, and we've got several new businesses that have already opened up since construction's been completed. This is Sheldon's service station. This is right next to the Lookout. It's right across from it. And this used to be a gas station called Sheldon's. I actually dug up 3 of their old gas tanks during the construction of the project that I had to remove. Thank you very much for leaving those there, but we took care of those for them. This is the Public Square Coffee Shop. We have 3 bike racks out there. We're giving bike racks out to anybody that wants them. So they're very successful so far, but you can see here there's a busy event going on at the Public Square Coffee Shop. And then this place, I haven't been able to go here yet, but this is the Coin House. This is a beer-cade. This is right behind the Bobo restaurant. They have 40 beers on tap, and they have video games. And it's basically self-serve. So they give you a wristband, they check your ID and stuff, and you charge up your wristband, and you can then go decide, I want 4 ounces of this, 2 ounces of that, 6 ounces of this. I want to play Pac-Man, I want to play Galaga. It's old school video games, and beers on tap. Really, really cool concept. Doing very, very well.
Can you give us the address of
If you know where Bobo's is, in La Mesa, it's right behind Bobo's. Again, this is all right around that Lookout, so you can go hang out with the snail. Lots of cool stuff to do. New restaurant coming in called Farmer's Table, another new business. I was out there the other week, and they are under construction. You can see they're not quite done yet. And they're having the public vote for fencing on their patio. So there's the left side, there's the right side, and you can see there's a little vote here sign. So they had a Sharpie out there, and they're like, vote for this one, vote for this one. My son liked the one on the right, but I like the one on the left. And then, sorry about that, the ultimate smart growth, we've got mixed use development going in. There's an 8-unit condo. This is an old gas station, used car lot downtown La Mesa. And we're going to have residents living downtown, our first residential development in 30, 40 years in the downtown La Mesa. We've won several awards, and I wanted to thank you all again for your help and oversight, and Sandag and Transnet dollars are extremely valuable to the city of La Mesa. Basically, that's our entire capital improvement program. We don't have general fund monies. And one thing I want to point out that the city council did that was really cool during the project is they put a holiday on the parking fees. The parking fees were incredibly useful we spent $1.3 million in parking fees for this project. We couldn't have done it without it. But in order to mitigate the impacts and show some gesture to the businesses, they said no parking fees during the construction of the project. And that was really well received. So thank you.
Thank you so much for providing that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any acknowledgement, any sign there that says this project funded by Sandag and et cetera, et cetera?
There was during the construction. There is not right now.
There's no permit. We'd like to have a brass sign.
That's a good idea.
Have you posted? There you go. Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Have you posted any analysis of the economic impact of this in terms of enhanced property tax or sales revenue from all that activity that you generate?
No, we haven't, and it's all brand new still. We opened in December of 2015, basically, and all those businesses have opened since then. So, property tax, sales tax there's a lag associated with it, but that would be a neat case.
That would be a very interesting thing to report back to Sandag, at least get some assessment of return on investment.
And I know we have to do the grants require us to do a lot of before, like pedestrian counts and bike counts and things like that. I think we did that with this project, but I'm not sure we looked at the economic sides of it, but certainly it's something that could be checked into.
Your presentation was interesting. Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
No,
Okay, well, thank you, and we're certainly proud of the project. Then now we have Civic San Diego. We have Kathleen Brand presenting. And this one is it's not a capital project, it's a planning project. So, and then at the end of the slide, it's just like at the end of the slide, there is a demonstration talk that is part of the capital improvement program that we are funding as well.
I'm Kathleen Brand. I'm a senior planner and landscape architect in Civic San Diego. The projects that I'm going to talk about is the East Village Green General Development Plan and the 14th Street Promenade Master Plan. Both of these are in the East Village of the downtown. The East Village Green is a 4.1 acre park plan for East Village. It's going to be the first community park in the downtown. It is located between F and G Streets and 13th and 15th Street. So it will have this general development plan that we use the grant for creates the overall design of the park. It is has been approved by the Park and Recreation Department, and it's the basis for all future development of the site. The plan includes the development of both parks. It will have numerous features, but right now we actually have in the capital improvement project plans or in the budget for next year to actually develop what we are calling phase 1 of the park. Phase 1 will include several different park features, but one thing I think I forgot to mention that last time I presented is also going to have a 204 space underground parking garage in what we call the West Block, so the block closest to New School of Architecture. So we'll have a multi-purpose lawn area, a 2-story community center, a play area for children, interactive water feature, off-leash dog parks, 2 cafe buildings, and there are existing 2 historic homes on the site, and we'll be relocating them and rehabilitating them as well. So this would be this is a simulation of what the park will look like standing at the corner of F and 14th Street, looking somewhat southwest. So you see an interactive fountain, a pavilion to the right, and then in the back would be the community center. This is looking from the opposite corner from G Street and 14th, looking northwest. Again, you see the pavilion, the open grass area. And this is looking from, again, the intersection of F and 14th Street. We're actually going to be narrowing 14th Street because the park is over 2 blocks. We wanted to be able to close off 14th Street for different events to really create a uniform park feel. So that's going to be part of phase 1.
So we anticipate going forward with the construction documents. We're going to City Council hopefully next month. It will be docketed and ready to go with the construction contract for the production of construction drawings, and then hoping to go actually to construction in August of 2018. So that's the East Village Green project, and then we also had, part of our grant proposal was to do the 14th Street Master Plan. Now the promenade as part of the downtown mobility plan is one of the greenways that is designated in that plan. It's also located or designated in the downtown community plan. So these greenways are basically a widening of the sidewalk area on one side of the street in order to create a true pedestrian zone. So for this greenway in particular, for 14th Street, that means taking the existing sidewalk on the east side of the street and pushing it out 14 to 16 feet into the public right-of-way, into the street. So the 14th Street Master Plan, or Promenade, goes from the north side of City College all the way to the south to Commercial and Imperial Avenue. And the north side, through the community inputs, the north side of the promenade has been designated as the Urban Discovery and Play Zone. It's what the community asked for. They wanted it to emphasize the fact that you're looking at two different school sites. We're looking at City College. We're looking at the new Urban Discovery area. It would include interactive features, historical or play features that could be implemented along the streetscape. In the center, the community asked for a park district, and within the park district, that is also going to be bookended by the new East Village Green Park and the existing Fault Line Park. And that again will have interactive features along the promenade. And at the very southern end, we have the entertainment and innovation area. And in this area, the community really wanted to see a celebration of Bob Sinclair, who is a local entrepreneur who had owned several properties in the East Village, and he promoted businesses and he promoted the preservation of some of the historic structures and warehouses. He also collected several old pieces of machinery, old manhole covers, a variety of things. So the community wanted to see some of those elements actually integrated into the design of the promenade in that section. So in the master plan, this is an example of what a simulation again of what it would look like. On the top, on the left, you see the existing conditions. There's 2 lanes of traffic moving north and 1 lane of traffic moving south with parallel parking on both sides of the street. And in the bottom picture, you see there's now 2 lanes of traffic, 1 in each direction. That streetscape on the east side of the street has been pushed out an additional 14 feet so that you truly have a promenade, a pedestrian zone for people to pass up and down the street. So with another Smart Growth Transportation Grant, we are going to do a demonstration block, which will be that block that I just showed you. That is 14th Street between F and Market Streets. You know where the Albertsons is. It's kind of a landmark in that area. So it'll be directly in front of Albertsons. And we are actually in the production of the construction documents right now. We have our consultant under contract, and we will be moving forward with construction starting in October of next year.
I have a question about your park project. Has anybody addressed the issue of the homeless and how that may impact your park development?
It is a huge issue because it is a huge issue in the downtown and in the East Village in particular. So there is sort of two prongs of it. On one side, you cannot discriminate against anyone for entering a park. But we are preparing these drawings, and this park is going to be a city park and recreation site. So the city is quite aware of what it takes to manage a park in the downtown area. So they know they're going to have security issues. We know we're going to be working in security systems. They know they're going to have more eyes on the park. And that is part of the design process, is really looking at how can you invigorate a park site so that more people come into it, more events are programmed at it, and so that you have less vacant space, more active space, and that will help with the problem of potentially having people camping. So is there a final solution? No. But it's going to be a work in progress, and everybody is quite aware.
Got some excellent plans laid out here. Do you have a feel for the capital cost to actually implement these plans?
Phase 1 right now is the estimate for the design contract and construction. This includes the parking garage as well. It's a 2-story parking garage, as well as the full park design is coming out at about $38 to $39 million.
And the source of that funding is?
CIP, the capital improvement project funding through the city. It's DIF funds that are going to be used for that.
It's state funds.
No, it's
There's
actually,
money
it's
earmarked.
city
Did you say
funds.
STIP?
DIF.
Oh, I
Development
thought you
Impact
said
Fees.
STIP, sorry.
Is there money earmarked for this project?
Yes, we have currently $20 million basically in the bank with the city for the design and construction. We just went through the city CIP, it's called the DIF Bowl, where we know approximately how much money is going to be coming in from developers. We are asking for another $5.5 million. So the park is going to be paid for with these DIF funds, developer impact fees, which is through the CIP city budget. But the parking garage is actually going to be paid for through parking district fees that are collected from this downtown parking district fund. So we have 12.75 million allocated already in that fund, and we'll be asking for, I think it's another 1.25 million. I think it's around 13 million that we need for the parking garage.
13 just for the garage?
Yes.
How many spaces?
About 204.
Two levels underground.
2 levels underground.
I don't know if anybody in the city still here, other than your part, but when they were talking about all these overlapping plans, and downtown has parking plan, there's a bike master plan, there's probably sewer and water plans for pipe replacement, there's active transportation, there's capacity increases. I guess when they're talking about overlaying all these things that they're talking about over these 18 to 24 months, it would, if there were opportunities for sharing in a corridor, that also would be a funding, optimizing funding. I'm assuming it's more probably a question for the previous group this year, but I don't know if any of that comes into play when you have a corridor like this.
Now, when we go through the planning process, part of, especially the 14th Street Master Plan, there was what we had a technical advisory group. We called it the TAG meeting. Tracy was a part of it as well, and we had somebody from streets, somebody from transportation, stormwater, the police department.
The police department was there for security, design.
So we try to coordinate what's going to go on, how are we going to do this, how are we going to make this work. So we will be continuing to do that. As I move this project forward as the project manager, I'm going to be constantly coordinating with the city. And I know even with our 14th Street Master Plan, I'm trying to set up a meeting right now with transportation and stormwater to talk about our bioswale that we're going to be developing. So it is going to be a constant communication, and I think at our level, we are ready and willing to work with the city as to how they're going to be implementing that. Another thing that I have seen, I've only been with Civic for approximately 9 months, but when they do the capital improvement budgeting, the CIP budgeting, they have something called the DIF Bowl. That was cute. So it's when all the city departments come in, they know how much money is coming in within every planning district, and all the different departments come in and say, I'd like a piece of the pie. So basically we need to do this so we get to hear all the different departments and what they want to do in the downtown area when we actually go to this DIF Bowl to present what our ideas are for development of projects like this. So we get a heads up in that as well. So it does require communication. We are going to be continually working with the city and the other departments and constantly in contact so that we can maximize what we're doing and our money spent.
And my point, I guess, is just like you don't want to see you do this project, but then no utility department has a major pipeline replacement project 5 years out that's going to tear up what you just did, or, I mean, there's so many different departments in the city with so many different
Yes.
pieces that
We are working on that, absolutely.
Thank you guys very much. I enjoyed it. It was happening. Item number 10, future meeting, next meeting scheduled for January 11th. So everybody's good for that.
Do we need to do anything for skipping the December meeting to officially?
No, that's true. Unless you would really need to have a meeting.
No, I didn't know we needed to take, I didn't know we needed to take
Action.
action to cancel the meeting.
No, because when you set your 2016 meeting calendar this time last year, you contemplated the fact that you would be potentially dark in August or December, as you usually are, so you're set.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, that, during the meeting. Thank you, everybody.